My name is Mwiti. I am a professional artist from Kenya, living in Nairobi. I am also an educator. I teach at Kenyatta University and recently graduated with my PhD in art practice, which is one of the, actually it's the first one in Kenya, so that makes me very proud of myself because it's like I'm wearing two hats, and that's really exciting. And my role as a woman in the society, let's talk about the Kenyan society, which is a patriarchal kind of society. As we know, it is layered with nuances and innuendos when you live in a society like ours, where you are trying to compete for all kinds of resources, inclusion in the workplace and things like that. As a woman, knowing that our parents probably struggled much more in this society than we are, but we are grateful because of what they've done so far. And our role, I don't think, will change for a while, as far as I can say, because it's the role of being a mother, a mentor. Even if you're a daughter, if you're an aunt, you're always mentoring the next generation. They look up to you. It is it's something that is in the society that is expected of a woman. So for us as women, I don't think we have a choice but to remain within those preset roles that the society has laid out for us.
What inspires you?
Okay, many things inspire me, but first of all, life. Being alive is inspirational because there's so much to live for. But besides that, because that is, of course, very general. But there's nature. For me, I'm really inspired by nature. Trees. Everywhere I go, I think I plant a tree, including even if I travel abroad, I will always carry a tree with me, or a plant, or a herb, or something. And of course, my garden here, I've completely grown it from zero. So I'm inspired by nature, and as you can see in some of my paintings, having grown in Meru, which is a very green area, it is on the windward side of Mount Kenya, and I grew up on a 10-acre coffee farm. And you know what that means. It simply means lots of rain, lots of soil and mud and everything, and lots of trees and lots of food. So for me, I grew up in an environment that, brought those things in me, and that is inspirational. Another thing is women. Being a woman, for one, that inspires me when I see what women do, what I see every day, what they struggle with, irrespective of Mama Mboga in the market, whether it's that woman that is aspiring to be the next president, whatever career a woman chooses. For me, at the background, I know there are so many layers she has had to deal with to get to where she is. So for me, those are things that really inspire me. Like when I look back at women working, inclusion in the workplace, Kenya has made like headways, if I would say that. Currently, the two, that's inclusion of women in the workplace, in the managerial levels. We are trying, but I know we are not quite there. It's an effort. It's still not quite there in terms of inclusion in politics and things like that. But for me, the aspect of the girl child being more empowered now, we can see a lot of, there's so much happening. And the girl child is really empowered in Kenya particularly, I would say that. From what I can see from even when I teach in class, the students who are in my class, girls versus boys and their performances, I see inclusion is improved a great deal compared to the couple of years that was there. So I think we are heading in the right direction. And even for me, who is an artist, a woman artist in Kenya, for some time that was not quite there, but the acceptance has been quite, it takes time. But it is now coming. We are in the same playing ground now. We are playing in the same, spaces with some of the male counterparts in the art spaces and things like that, and also in the university as well. So for me, there's so much that is happening in Kenya that we can at least appreciate. Yeah.
And what do you think should be done to probably improve on especially the spaces that are at least undermined and women inclusion has not yet been achieved?
That I would say there's a lot of education that is required. It's the issue of education and who are we educating? Because if you educate only the women, then the inclusion will not happen. So I think also educating men that women needs to be there as intelligent as the men, and they're as hardworking as the men, and they're supporting their homes. And more so now we are seeing more women are actually breadwinners in their homes. So for me, when I see that, then maybe the education should also be with the men, so that they realize that this is a support that we are getting from the women. The more we include them, the better for them as well, and also for their families. So for me, it's about education and exposure.
What do you think is the role of a woman in art?
Wow, that's a good one. I would start with the artistic. You know, the art areas are considered to be more male-oriented. The space is actually, when you look, and I've listened to these conversations, particularly in the visual arts. I don't know about the performing arts, but I think the same thing happens in those areas as well. The appreciation of the woman takes more time than if it was a man. And for a woman to be involved in the art scene, I think she pushes a lot harder. But for me, what I like about what I'm seeing is the space is not quite filled. It's a huge gap for women artists, whether it's in music, whether it's in visual arts, whether it's in the performing arts. It's a huge gap. And when a woman pushes that, because women are resilient, they are hardworking, they are multitasking all the time. For me, I see women, if they can push that envelope a little bit more, then there's a huge gap to fill in. But what happens in most cases is we know women, our challenges are minimal. Like when a woman gets a child, for instance, or gets married or whatever, then her time is for her art is torn. I mean, she divides her time between her family, taking care of her family, and her practice. And because of that, it means she has to work extra hard to be able to make headways. So for me, the artworks that are coming out of women are quite amazing. And when you see a woman getting there, then you know where she's coming from. The background she's coming from is not easy. She's running to take care of her child. She's taking her child to school. She has a sick mother, a sick whatever. She's the one doing all that and doing all the, you know, the mundane, I call them mundane because actually they are, of cooking, washing, and doing all these other things, chores in the home. And yet she still has time to do work in her practice and succeed. So for me, that is a huge deal. And those women who are pushing that envelope need to keep pushing, because the gap is huge. And the acceptance as you move higher is much, much more. For me, I don't make New Year's resolutions. For some reason, I don't know. I see like time is a loop. So for me, it's not a beginning of a year. For me, it's a continuity. So for me, I think Salvador Dali works for me in terms of bending time. And for that reason, I don't see the year as a beginning, but a continuous process of my evolution. For me, it's about what am I evolving into. But what I've learned this year particularly, because I think from travel you meet people, different cultures, different people doing different things. This year for me was interesting. As in 2024, for me, I can say it's a very beautiful year, because I want to live in the moment. I want to be present with whatever I'm doing. If it is drinking water, I want to be able to drink water in the moment. If it's having a session with you like now, this for me means this is all I want to do in that moment. I don't want to think of other things. So I'm learning to kind of scale down, live in the moment, and be creative in the moment. And it's been amazing so far.
So kindly tell us about your newly acquired certificate.
Yeah.
What is it about and what is it for? What is it meant for?
All right. So recently, this is December, I graduated. I defended my PhD in practice-based, it's a practice-based PhD, so I got a Doctor of Arts in painting. And this happened in Poland, Academy of Arts Szczecin. And this PhD has been going on for the last 3 years. Sponsored by the EU through a program we call Transcultural Perspectives in Art and Art Education that I was involved in from 2020. And the interesting thing about this PhD is that it highlights more of the practical side of art as opposed to the philosophical side of what we do normally for PhDs in Kenya. So that's why it became the first one in Kenya, because before this, we were not talking about practice-based. Masters, we do that at the university. That's what I did for my masters. But for PhD, for a long time, we were not able to do the practice-based PhDs, because I think the way and how of doing it was not very clear. But for me, this is what I managed to do. And one of the things that was significant is the recognition of my practice of 10 years that played a role in being even accepted to do that particular PhD from Africa, because I was the first one also at the Academy of Arts, coming from Africa, from Kenya, basically, and I was, of course, the first woman even to do that at the Academy of Arts. So for me, this was a big deal, because for a long time we've been wondering, is it possible for us who are in the practice-based programs at the university, can we be able to do something similar for the PhD level and be recognized by the Commission for University Education, which has probably not dealt, probably I'm the one who will be the first one to present that document and explain exactly how it works, which I'm ready for, of course. Yeah, but this was very important. And what is exciting also for practicing artists in Kenya is that they see an opportunity to do the same, as opposed to philosophizing about a practical area. Why not actually philosophize and do the practical as well? So that was not very clear in the past, but now this is a new beginning, and I hope many universities will take lead and do similar programs here in Kenya.
And how do you celebrate small wins?
For me, this is how I do it. The small wins is everything. For me, I'm not even talking about just an achievement like this, which I've been looking forward to doing, of course, for a very, very long time, and inspiring the young people and inspiring also the women. Knowing very well, I've been told for many times, you do your PhD, then no one will be interested in talking to you. People are so scared of you. But it shouldn't be like that. Why should it be that women are not appreciated for going far in their academic areas, It should be as equal to the men as well. So for me, this is a new area, and I'm trying to see what's going to happen. But the celebrations is accepting that it's two-sided. It's a double-edged sword. And I want to celebrate, so that by doing those celebrations, the way I do it is talking about it like we are doing with you right now. This is one form of celebration, is inviting. Many times I've invited young people into my compound and set up exhibitions, and we have this. I like just having those conversations, having conversations with even the kids who are joining the high school. For me, in the neighborhood, I do that. I sit with them and we have a chat. What do you want? For me, those are my forms of celebration.
In 2024 so far, what are you mostly grateful for?
Gratitude. That's the first thing I'm grateful for. Gratitude that when you want something so much and so badly, and you put your mind to it and set your goals to it, eventually it comes to pass. It doesn't matter how long it takes. And when it happens, then that's when you realize being grateful in the first place for the people who support you. For that journey you don't take alone. You take with a community. And for me, that's the gratitude I'm talking about. Being grateful that you are never alone, even in the most difficult situation. The places I've traveled, even doing this PhD, I met people that were so supportive that I met for the first time. And it's because of the positive attitude of being grateful that you're even there in that moment. And that's what my takeaway is: always be grateful for whatever reasons, and be thankful and be giving. It's always that. And that's what comes back, in many measures, comes back to you.
Who are obviously younger than you by 10 years, 20 years. In this case, I'd like us to put much focus on the women in their 30s and the women in their 20s. What piece of advice would you give these two groups of women?
All right. These are actually the same groups that I teach at the university, because that's when the period when they are joining the university, the 20s. By the time they finish their year 4, they are turning 25. and then they come back and do their masters, which is their 30s, and you know, for women there is a fear that I'm growing old too fast or I'm too young. What I notice with most of them is the 20s particularly, there's a feeling that you are young forever, but no one is young forever, and this is the shock that hits you. By the time you're getting to that, you're like, oh my God, what did I do with my 20s? So in their 20s, they kind of seem to take life so much for granted that I'll always be 20. And no one wants to be even 21. So by the time they're hitting 21, they're like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do with my life? But for me, what I would say is you need to focus on you. And remember, you're not young forever. And don't waste your youthfulness. Being youthful, you can easily forget because you have so much energy. And you think you'll be young forever, so you don't do the things you need to do, like going to school. I know so many of my friends, younger, like the age of my son, that went to school and left school at some point because they're like, I'll come back and do it. But then suddenly they are 25 and they're like, I should have finished before I got to 25 because I thought I'll be young for so long. And by that time, they're like, I would have been done with this education like a long time ago if I stuck to it. I see a lot of those mistakes. Like you want to live life so fast, like it's going out of fashion kind of thing. And instead of concentrating, for instance, on school, you end up getting involved with other, lifestyles, social life and stuff like that. And before you know it, time has run out of you, in other words. So for me, what I would say is harness your time. Like stick to your goals. When you finish all this, life will still be there for you to live. So, and many times my mother always says, the young people, what they don't do is get a hold of themselves, kind of thing. Like, be your own person, be your own provider. Don't look at, oh, there's someone out there that I can look out to that is going to take care of me or something like that. And we get caught in this web of deception. And then before you know it, then you have to come back again and start afresh from nothing. And that's the sad part of the story. And that we see a lot of that happening. And for the 30-year-olds, that's the time you actually need to be like, the society expects you to start a family in your 30s because they're like, time is running out of you and stuff like that. Okay, it's here and there. For me, I don't know really whether it matters. But point is, in your 30s, at least be stable. Be sober. Keep it simple. Yeah? Go for what you want and stick to it. When you achieve it, trust me, you can do the rest at your own time. Yeah.
We are done with the questions, but there's this one activity that I forgot to mention it to you. But then again, the reason why I didn't put it down as part of the questions is so that you do not
think about it. It's spontaneous.
It's a spontaneous riddle.
All right, a riddle.
Yes.
Wow. Okay, let's see.
So our riddle for IWD is this. There is a man. He's seated in his car, and he is just from picking his father from a doctor's appointment. And as his father gets into the car, his phone starts ringing. And the father looks at him and tells him, "Go ahead, son, pick it up." So he picks up the phone call, and on the phone is a CEO of a very renowned tech company in Silicon Valley. And the caller tells him, "All the best, son, you can do it."
The father now tells him. The caller says, "Son,
all the best,
okay,
son, you can do this."
Yes.
So I'd want to know from you, how is this possible?
That's a multi-layered question, because the Silicon CEO calls him son, but the father is in the car. And who is on the phone then? So the question is, how is this possible?
Yeah.
What part is, how is this possible?
Everything in existence.
All right, let me think through it. Maybe the CEO is a friend of his, and they've worked together, and he knows the story of this man and his father, you know, or maybe this is a friend to the dad, so that son, you can do it, it means it's an older person, and probably he knows that maybe they are friends with the father and he's advising him because he already knows the story of this person. Oh, the best son, you can do this. But do what? You see, the son, the situation is very interesting, being that the father is in the car. The father is not, he's left the hospital. So that means the father is okay. So what is he being told? Oh, the best, you can do this. So for me, I'm finding the riddle a bit, it has gaps in that riddle, in that, oh, the best son, you can do it, is there's a gap somewhere in the story. That's what I'm thinking. And I would want to know that gap if I'm to answer the riddle.
So that's your...
That's what I'm thinking of. Oh, the best son, you can do this. But do what? What is he doing? What is he being told, encouraged to do? Yeah, so for me, I'm wondering, where is he being told, oh, the best son, you can do this? Do what?
Would you like the answer?
Of course, I would want the gap. I mean, I'm seeing so many gaps in the story.
It's a riddle, that's why it's...
Yeah, but even in riddles, because actually
There are no gaps.
Huh? No. In riddles, there are no gaps. I have done a whole series of riddles when I was doing my PhD. Actually, my PhD was about riddles and how, but the context of the riddle is dependent on the person and the environment they grew up in. Like, for instance, if I grew up in the village of Meru, we would give a riddle dependent on the experiences of that community, on that environment. Mm-hmm. And for me, the gap that is missing is the environment, mm-hmm. the context of the riddle. Every riddle has a context. Particularly the African riddles, yeah. There's a context when you're looking at a riddle. So I'm looking for the context.
The context here is the CEO of this company is the mother.
Oh. But why is she telling him, oh, the best son, you can do this?
Because he's the mother, he's the son, and he's just picking up the father from his doctor's appointment.
But why? Do what? The father is in the car.
Yes.
So the best you can do what? The father is already in the car.
Yes.
You can only be encouraged if you found your father in bed dying, and your emotions are like, you know, all over, like wondering, how am I going to deal with this situation? But the father is already in the car. That means he's okay. He's being picked from hospital. So unless the son can't drive.
No. The context here is sexism. You already imagined that the CEO had to be a man.
Oh,
and not
a woman. Ah, the sexism. Yes, definitely. I didn't think it was a mother, and definitely I thought it was a CEO was a man. Yes, that's true.
Happy International Women's Day.
There we go.